Welcome to Chapter 6 of the WhatsApp course with High Level, with me, Chris Dillon, walking you through everything you need to know about WhatsApp in the High Level platform. Now is where we get to the meat of creating the content that goes out on WhatsApp. And it is done differently to the email. So we're going to talk about that in this chapter. And what we're going to talk about is template messages. And before I do so, I'm going to explain the difference between template messages and what we call session messages. In the last chapter, I mentioned the 24-hour window that you have to go back to somebody with any message when somebody has started a conversation with you. Either they've replied to a message that you've sent them, or they've sent you the first message, or they've sent you a message out of the blue. When that conversation opens, we can send session messages. We can also send template messages in that 24-hour window. It isn't one or the other. But those session messages could just be anything you type. So they might be a back and forth. They might be you just answering questions, how you would normally interact, a little bit like a live chat. It's how you would normally use WhatsApp. We can go back with voice notes. We can send images and videos. We can do everything that you can do with normal WhatsApp in that 24-hour period. And every time somebody replies to you, that clock gets reset back up to 24 hours. You could, in theory, have a perpetually open conversation as long as the person you're responding to messages you once every 23 hours and 59 minutes. The conversation would never close. Now, that would probably be impractical for most businesses we speak to, but it's good for you to be aware that that can happen. Template messages, on the other hand, can be sent outside of that window. Session messages can't be. In the system, you're going to see session messages referred to also as free-form messages, and we'll show you that during the workflow bit. So session messages and free-form messages can only be sent in open conversations. Template messages can be sent whenever. They can be sent 365 days of the year, 24/7, outside of the conversation window, inside of the conversation window. They can be sent as mass mailers. They can be sent as automated messages. They can be sent as utility and marketing, and we'll talk about the differences here. Now, how you go and create a template message is relatively straightforward. So in the back end of your system, you go into settings and you'll see WhatsApp. This will be here on the left-hand side. Where you see the number, which we've talked about before, at the top here, you've also got templates. We're going to go into templates. Now in here, what I would recommend is creating a folder for the type of messages you're creating. So if, like me, you go out every week, and you send a WhatsApp message to a community that you've built, you could create a folder, which is community messages. And then every template message you goes into that folder, a little bit like the folders you may have been used to on the email side. To create a template, there are two different ways to do it. You can create a template by pressing the big blue button on the left-hand side, which is what we're going to do in this course. But what you can also do, if you've got a previous message that you've already created, is you can click the three dots on the left-hand side, and one of the options will be to clone a previous template. Then you can go in there and edit and amend the template. So if you've got a series of messages where you want them to have the same buttons, have the same links attached to it, which you'll see when I build it out now, you may want to clone the previous template to save you a little bit of time. But for now, we're going to start one from scratch. First three things you need to do: add a template name, add a category, and add a language. Template name just needs to be unique in your account. You can't have any spaces in it, but even if you try and put a space in it, this is a test 2025. You'll see that it'll automatically put an underscore in there for you. Now, the two categories of messages, utility and marketing. I'm going to go into detail on what the two differences are. There is a difference in cost when you're sending these messages as well. So Meta has a cost associated with sending WhatsApp messages. And the cost for sending a marketing message is usually around about twice the cost of sending a utility message. The basic differences are marketing message would contain a lot more fluffy language. It might have videos in there. It may have buttons trying to get to you to encourage some action, some links, that kind of stuff. Utility messages are more, this is the purpose for this message. You've booked a meeting, here's the confirmation details. You've done this, here's this. It can be more utilitarian because that's the whole point of the message. But when you submit the message, Meta will validate it, and it may change the category based on how they've read it. Now, one of the features that High Level gives us is if your message is a marketing message, for example, I've got one here on the 1% Club that I run, is you can use the WhatsApp template rewriter, and it will select a template and do its best AI to turn it from existing marketing messages into utility messages that go. This is particularly important in the United States, in that there is a limit on how many marketing messages you can send, as is detailed in this screen here. Marketing messages will be paused to US-based numbers. That's not from US accounts, that's just 2 numbers that start with +1. Because there is competition over in the States that there isn't internationally, and they want to maintain the quality of that. Utility messages, as mentioned, are completely differently charged. They're a lot cheaper than marketing messages, and utility messages are not subject to a per user marketing limit, ensuring 100% delivery. What that means is every 24 hours, you are limited to 2 marketing messages to 1 person per day, unless that person opens up the conversation. So if I send a marketing message at 9 o'clock in the morning and I send one at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and they haven't responded to any of them and that conversation is still closed, I have to wait until 9 o'clock the following day to send another marketing message. Utility messages aren't subject to that. So when you're creating the message, make sure you're selecting the category correct, and feel free to use High Level's rewriter to be able to get a good feel for that. Now, me as a business, I use a lot of marketing messages. This is a test message. And the reason I do that is because I like to put videos in. I like to put a lot of engagement. It tends to fall into the marketing category, but the engagement and the results we get from it tend to outweigh any of the differences between marketing and utility. Language is self-explanatory. You simply select the language that you're going to be sending this in. I type in English, and for some reason Meta gives us 3 different Englishes. You select which one would be most applicable for you. For the sake of this course, I'm just going to select normal English without any country specific in there. Now we have a handy preview on the right-hand side. This is where we can see what the message is going to turn into. The header of a message doesn't have to actually go in the message, right? That could be optional. I will be recommending that you use it, but I want to show you what the message would look like without one for the sake of this. So thank you for getting in touch. We have booked that meeting for you. See you there. And you can see the message preview on the right hand side is just like a normal WhatsApp would be if you typed that out and sent it to people. This is boring. This isn't going to get you the engagement. It isn't going to get you the reaction. This could just be a normal SMS sent to them. What we want to do is get a little bit more excitement, a little bit more engagement in there. So we have the ability to use a header. Now, a text-based header is simply a larger, bolder bit of text that goes at the top. You're limited to 60 characters. This is the header. And whilst in the preview it shows you as another line, in reality, when that's sent, it's a lot bolder, it's a lot clearer that is essentially like a header for the same way you would have in an email. We can have images and videos that go at the top here. And all we have to do is upload whichever one makes sense. So for me, for example, I'm going to put a video in here as people are going through. Let me try and find a video that we're going to put in here. So this is an example of a video that I would put in a WhatsApp message. You can see the preview on the right-hand side, and you can see that I can play it. There are file size limits on this. It's worth noting these down. So for images, they need to be either PNGs or JPEG files, and they're limited to a maximum of 5 megabytes. For videos, they must be MP4, and they're limited to 16 megabytes. At the time of recording, the documents are limited to PDF files, and again, they're limited to 16 megabytes. And when you click on location, so you'll see images, videos, documents very much look the same when you select them. You just upload the file into this blue box here, or when it's highlighted, it'll be blue. For location, this is where you could put latitude, longitude, location, name, and address. All of these are mandatory fields when you're using location. They're really, really handy if you've got somebody coming for, let's say, a physical appointment. You can put your exact address there. They can click on it in their phone, and it gives them the option to open that location so that they can put it into their sat nav, and it makes it easy for them. It's a really useful little feature. But for now, let's use an image. I use a lot of videos in my process. I would always recommend using videos, and I have a whole thing where I explain that as we're going and why videos I feel are a lot more powerful. But we're going to use an image that I have on here. In the body of the text, you'll notice this big blue button here, add a variable. This is where you can make your messages incredibly personalized. So this message I've set up says, thank you for getting in touch. We've booked that meeting for you. Let's make it a little bit less boring than that. I could say something like, good news, and then put their name. And when I click add a variable, it's going to add 2 curly brackets, the number 1, 2 curly brackets. And it opens up these 2 boxes. Now down here, what I can do in here is I can go and select a custom variable, and I can go to contact, and I can put first name. And in sample content, what I have to put here is something that would go in that box if I didn't have the field that I've put in there. So let's say I wanted to send this to somebody and I did not have their first name. I have to put something in this box that would replace that should the message be sent. For example, good news arrives, because that contextually would make sense in the message. That sounds weird, but generally speaking, I'm going to have the first name of everybody that is going through this process. Thanks for getting in touch. We've booked that meeting for you. I might say the details are below. Start time. And then I could put another variable, and you'll see it adds a variable with the number 2 in it. I might put start date, and then add another variable. And then I might put location. And again, put another variable. Now, what this means is I can go in here, and instead of going into the contact this time, I might go into the appointment, and I might put start time. And I might go in here, go appointment, and put start date. And I'll go in here, go to appointment, and put meeting location. Now, if you've integrated your calendar system in High Level with things like Zoom or with Google Meets for video calls, it will pull through in the meeting location the link that they need. And we can then put it into a WhatsApp message that gets sent to them. Now, I'm going to scroll down very quickly because I want you to see this. At the moment, the create button is grayed out. And that's because I still have some empty boxes here. These are mandatory fields that we have to put in. Now, for things like start time, start date, location, there's no way to really fill that in a way that would make sense in the message if you don't have that information. So I like to say, check your email. Generally speaking, when you set this up correctly, you're not going to have to worry about that. But as soon as I fill out those 3 boxes, you'll see that the create button at the bottom is now not grayed out. The footer in a message is completely optional. The footer is a little bit of gray text that goes at the bottom here. Now, you might use this for something like, send me the word surprise for some extra goodies. Again, you have a limit of 60 characters in here. This is optional. I probably use it only on about 5% of the messages that I create. One way that is really good to use on it for, as we said in the warning in chapter 3, is something like to opt out, send back the word stop. That encourages somebody to send you the word stop. That's still a reply in Meta's eyes, and we can use that, as I'll show you in a training further down the line in this course, to get people opted out. And then at the bottom, this is where we can add the buttons. For me, personally, the 2 biggest advantages that WhatsApp has over any other platform we're sending messages from is the ability to add video seamlessly so that people can watch and hear your voice. And I've got a whole chapter talking specifically on videos and their importance. But the interactive buttons are where it really starts to become an effective platform. Really, really good. So different types of buttons that we can have in the messages. There are flow buttons, and I'll talk about flows in a later chapter. So we're going to ignore that for now, but just be aware that it's there. Copy offer code. So if you're doing this as part of an offer where they can use a promo code on your website to get a discount on something, for example, you could have a copy offer code. You simply type in what the code is, and when they click it, it copies it on their phone, and they can then just go and paste it into that box. Excuse me. On this, you haven't got the option to change what the text reads. but you could change the different call to action to be a visit website button. In here, you can change this. So you might say, check availability, for example. There are two different URL types. They're static and dynamic, and I'll explain the difference between the two. Static, relatively straightforward. This could be the marketing autopilots, our website.com. Now, if you're copying and pasting from a website at the time of recording this, the https:// in here is a mandatory part of the URL. It has to be this. If you copy and pasted it and you've gone https :// when you try and click create, you should get an error that says your URL is incorrect. As you can see at the top, template creation or update failed. That's because this is doubling up the HTTPS here. So you want to get rid of this when you're trying to submit the message. The other types of buttons you can have as call to actions are call phone number, again, self-explanatory. You might do this, and then for me, I might go search for United Kingdom, put in the phone number 208-058-5858. We actually have our phone number linked up to our voice AI agent in High Level. So when you call that number, it redirects through to the High Level system and our AI picks up. So we may have a moment where we use that. The other types of buttons, so they're all the call to action buttons that you can see at the bottom. The other types of buttons are quick reply buttons. Now, one is a marketing opt-out button. And again, this could be stop promotions. And in the back end, this puts into the footer message, not interested, tap stop promotions. And there's an automation that automatically unsubscribes them. Then I can go into custom. And you can actually have up to 10 different buttons in these messages. However, when you go past 3, if you look at the preview on the right-hand side, so I've got 3 at the bottom now. If I was to add a 4th, it condenses the 3rd option into the rest of the options. So it will only ever show the user a maximum of 3, and they've got to click on something extra to open up all the other buttons. My personal recommendation is to make sure you limit it to 3 options. So I'll get rid of one of them. And in here, we can type in anything. So for me, I might say for a meeting confirmation, I might have, I need to reschedule. I might also have, I'm excited. And then I might have, I have a question. These are realistically the only 3 things that people would need to interact with this message for. But I've covered most of the bases. So if I send this as a meeting confirmation, and between the meeting and me sending this message, something comes up for them, something happens, giving them the ability to reschedule it proactively is a lot easier than trying to get them to rebook it after that time has passed. Also, telling them that at any point they can press the I have a question button and they can ask anything of our team beforehand is really, really effective. Now, what these buttons do in the message, all that they do, is reply to your message with exactly that text. So if a user receives this message, they click on that button, it literally replies to that message with just the words, I need to reschedule. And I'm going to show you in another chapter exactly how we link that in with workflows, where we look out for specifically those button responses and we send a series of messages or trigger anything in the system that happens off the back of it. It's really, really powerful to know all of the different options that you can put in this message. But as I've mentioned, and I think it was point number 2 I made in the warning, is make your messages really engaging. By putting buttons here that cover all of the bases, you're naturally going to be engaging. Naturally. And you can have that kind of variable option in there. Now, I mentioned the last button type, the view a website button. I mentioned that there are static and dynamic. Now, you can't make a URL in a WhatsApp template message completely dynamic. It can't be completely unique. Purely because at the time of recording this, Meta will scan the URL that you're putting in the message. And if it is going to be dynamic on everything, you could, in theory, put a nefarious link or a spam link or something to an adult website in there and just put it as a dynamic field, and it just populates when you send the message. But Meta's already verified it, so it would be fine. Meta doesn't want you to be able to do that for understandable reasons. So you need to make sure that the root domain is put here. For example, you might have your business website / that person's name. So you would put the website in here, and then you would use a variable and go down here the same way that we selected variables to go in the message. Select what variable is going to go at the end of the URL, and then the sample content if there's a default website that they'd fall to if they haven't got that information or the website doesn't exist. That's how you can make it dynamic. But let's get rid of that. We'll just keep these buttons here. So I've got, I'm excited, I have a question. We've done everything at the top. We've selected it, which is why we've got the big blue create button here. And when I press create, it is going to submit it to Meta for validation. It should automatically refresh onto the screen with the templates, the previous templates that we had, and we called this one, this is a test message. So give it around about 10 seconds. It submits it to Meta. It will do the validation for you. And for most messages, only takes around about 20 or 30 seconds for them to verify it completely. Now, if I go in here and I search this is a test message, you'll see here that it says pending. That's because at the moment it's been submitted to Meta and it's pending validation. As I said, usually within 20 to 30 seconds, you'll get an email. I've just received that email. And if I was to refresh this screen and look here again, it is going to show as active. So we go and refresh the screen. Type in this is a test to find that message again. So we'll go this _is. And you can see now that that's changed from pending to active. The reason that's important is I've talked about what you can do with template messages, but you can only do them when they have been approved by Meta. So if you're building a workflow and there's a message that's still pending, you won't see it in the drop-down list to be able to send it as part of a workflow. You won't see it in the drop-down list to be able to mass mail that WhatsApp out. Only active messages will show later on in the system as you can see them. These are template messages. This is why it's really important to be able to know how to send these, and you can go into a normal user's file. And when you've had those messages approved by Meta, you can go into a customer's file. So down here, when you have WhatsApp engaged, you'll see along with SMS and email, you'll see WhatsApp. Now, what you will see currently is this blue box here said select a template to initiate a chat. Because there's been no contact from the person that you're speaking to within the last 24 hours, this is outside of that closed window we talked about in one of the chapters earlier. I can select and click that blue button here, and it will give me a list of the messages that I have already had approved that I can send and their category. I mentioned that most of the ones that we do are marketing messages, but it will also have some utility messages in here. You can select any of them and send them as well. So I might select community welcome message. It will show me the body of the text, give me a preview of what I'm about to send to that person. I could replace the image at this stage as well if I wanted to, and click send. I also have the ability to schedule this individually to that one person. So I've got schedule the WhatsApp to go, and that could be individual for one person from here. Really, really useful tip. The importance of template messages are to be able to send them 24/7. Now, in one of the future chapters through this, we're going to show A, how to put it into automations, and B, how to put it into bulk messaging. But template messages, you can personalize and you can make really handy, but they're where we're going to build the majority of the API messages. I mentioned in the previous chapter about that 24-hour window and what messages I would recommend to be able to send to somebody outside of that 24-hour window. So let's say, hypothetically, somebody has responded to you or somebody has sent you a message and you failed to go back to them in that 24-hour window. There are two different types of messages I would send, and it depends on your business. It depends on the scenario. I would create both of these types of messages. Number one is a message something like, hi, Chris here, saw that you sent the message above, is now a good time to chat, as just a body of text message. No images, no buttons, no fanciness, just that, as if you'd gone back to them manually, because you will be sending this manually via the way that I've shown a couple of moments ago. They then, of course, will come back and say yes when they're ready to say yes. That opens up the conversation at that point, and then you can go back in and have a chat with them. Alternatively, you can go down the slightly more formal route where you could have a message that says, "Hi, thanks so much for starting the conversation. Our team weren't available at the time, but they are now. Just click the button below to resume the conversation," and then have a quick reply button that's something like "resume conversation." They press it. Obviously, that's a reply as well. That opens up the conversation and you can go into it. Those two different types of messages, they're both template messages, but two different styles of messages, I should probably say, could be used in different scenarios with different people, with prospects, with customers. That's kind of down to you how you would put that into practice. But they're what I call conversation restart messages. And they're really useful to have already approved as templates because you can send them 24/7 and you can send them manually when you want to go back to a conversation you may have previously missed.